The psychedelic revolution is here. If you want to integrate your visionary experiences into your purpose, get clear on your entrepreneurial path, and help people while you do what you love, then this podcast is for you. Welcome to The Psychedelic Entrepreneur, medicine for these times. I'm your host, Beth Weinstein. I'm a spiritual business coach, 3-time entrepreneur, and a lifelong student of psychedelics and sacred plant medicines. You carry your own unique medicine, and your medicine is what we need for these times. This podcast will help you to share your medicine so you can create transformation in the world. Listen in on conversations with psychedelic leaders, changemakers, and conscious entrepreneurs who are living proof that a better world is possible when you follow your heart and live in alignment with your soul. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Today, I'm really excited to have Tom Feegel joining with us. He is the CEO of Beond. Hi, Tom. Thank you so much for being with us.
Hello, Beth. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's really nice to meet you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, I can't wait to jump in. I have actually not had one guest come on and talk about ibogaine yet, so I can't wait to get started, but I'll tell people a little bit about you here. Experienced entrepreneur, founder, and executive of numerous successful venture-backed startup companies, Tom Feegel is CEO of Beond, the world's premier network of medically based ibogaine treatment facilities for addiction, depression, anxiety, and PTSD. Beond's mission is to help people end chemical dependency and to end the addiction and suicide epidemic with psychotherapeutic treatment, psychedelic plant medicine innovation. So, Tom, this is really interesting. I was introduced to you by a common friend who said, oh, he's the guy that founded EO Products, you know, that like health food store product. And I immediately knew, because of course I would buy your products from, I think maybe when I was like a teenager onward, a long time ago. And so I was like, well, that's an interesting transition. I would love to hear about your background. How did you get to where you are now? And what did you used to do? Like, what was your dream when you were younger? Like, what did you come here for? What do you think you came here for?
I've always, thanks for the question. Just to be clear, I didn't found EO Products.
Oh.
I was the CEO of EO Products, a wonderful company that makes natural, often usually organic ingredients, personal care products, hand soap, hand sanitizer, and also plant-based. The reason EO is so great and the reason you love it is because we didn't change anything. Nature got it right, and we didn't add anything to it. It's a wonderful company. I was grateful to lead that company. I am I'm an entrepreneur. I was a business strategy consultant for many years. I eventually evolved into a innovation strategy expert, so to speak. That was my practice at 2 very large global consulting firms, focused on understanding growth strategy, really understanding what are the pitfalls of innovation and how can we build products and services that are sort of de-risked, if you will. How can we truly understand what people need, price it right, before we build it? And that's what I've been trained to do. But that's not why I'm here at Beond. In large part, I'm here at Beond for a personal reason, is because someone in my family's life was saved as the result of an ibogaine treatment. They were an opioid addict as a result of a prescription to an opioid, as a result of a dental procedure, and that progressed. And more than a year and a half later, they were an IV heroin user and went to every conventional rehabilitation facility they could in the U.S., did what they said, stayed as long as they were told, paid a lot of money each time, and eventually they would get out. and something would trigger a physiological response and they would relapse. A friend told them about ibogaine. They went to a facility in Mexico. The plant medicine worked miraculously, but the environment was very toxic and very woefully ill equipped to provide a holistic service. And no doctors, no psychologists, no nutrition. Um, good intentions, good intentions. We can talk about how that happens. And so I made a promise to them that if I ever could, if we ever could, if the world regulatory, cultural, legal, finance environment was conducive, we would build the place that they should have gone. And that's what we've done here.
I'm just like floored because, of course, I'm looking back onto when I was 19 years old and, I was actually doing a lot of drugs and I also had dental surgery and I could see how easily that would happen. But gosh, like you don't think about how something as simple as a dental procedure could turn into a heroin addiction.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
Fascinating.
unfortunately, that's like one of the most obvious sort of juxtapositions. But then you go into dental procedure, oftentimes equates with pain. We have in the US and other places have had an epidemic of pain. And we now know, as a result of factual evidence, documents, journalism, hard journalism, books like Dope Sick and others, that it's hard not to be cynical about some of the practices and the underlying intentions of some of those pharmaceutical companies, their marketing, their sales, and their distribution through doctors of overprescribing got a lot of people very, very sick.
Yes.
Um,
This is not the first story that I'm sure our listeners have heard because, of course, everybody seems to know someone. I mean, I had a friend last year, his 19-year-old son died of one overdose, and it started as a prescription for some other, yeah, he was a good kid. They were not from the wrong side of the tracks or anything. It was just it was one of these same exact stories.
well, one last point on this topic.
Um,
Then we see the introduction. So we had a pain epidemic. We have an opioid epidemic. We had that's well documented before we started to hear about fentanyl. And
mm,
fentanyl introduced into the illicit drug market, if you will, really unfortunately, really made any experimental drug use extremely dangerous and really forces people to test in a way. There used to be this concept of kind of a weekend warrior, someone who went out and used drugs but didn't have a dependency. Now they can get addicted extremely quickly to
mm,
something that's otherwise not as addictive because there's intentional introduction of fentanyl. And worse, they could overdose because there's introduction of fentanyl.
mm.
It's an extremely different time for that type of behavior and the risks, and therefore the need for treatment to really help people.
Huge, huge. Yeah. Fentanyl is a whole other crisis that, I mean, again, I've said this to multiple people. If fentanyl was around when I was 18 through 20 something, I probably would have died. Because, back then it was the weekend warrior. We would just do whatever was handed to us. But let's shift gears a little. I want to hear a little bit more about then why Beond, besides your personal story, but why go this direction? Why not just donate a bunch of money to ibogaine?
Yeah,
And what is Beond all about? Like, what's the vision you have for this company?
sure. So first, I mean, as I said, it comes from a personal reason and the really, like, I'm a curious entrepreneur. I wanted to know, why doesn't this exist? And what would need to be true? This is the question we're trained to ask. What needs to be true for the solution that is truly needed to exist? Could it be accessible? Could it be affordable? Could it be effective? Could it, when we say effective, of course, could it be safe? What does safe mean? And so I started really asking a lot of questions and meeting a lot of people, and noticed that there's some really wonderful people administering ibogaine, but oftentimes they, like other entrepreneurs or other startup venture leaders, whether it's a sole practitioner, they do it in the way that they think is best rather than the way that may be best, may be needed. And so um, it didn't exist. And so I first started by saying, okay, if we were to aim to have medical safety, what would that mean? That would mean you have to have a particular type of skill set with the experience, licensed professional credentialed physician um, with experience with ibogaine, and there aren't that many of them. There's Dr. Jeffrey Camlett, Dr. Felipe Malacara, Dr. Sola at Clear Sky, another place. There aren't a lot of them. And I just happened to go meet them and say, if we could do it in this holistic way, would you join? And two of the three said yes. So very proud to have Dr. Camlett and Dr. Malacara as our medical leadership. But again, that's one piece of the puzzle. The next piece of the puzzle is, so what about the underlying psychotherapeutic care continuum or delivery model? So what would that look like? What it would look like is, number one, we would really try to address the root cause of addiction, which oftentimes is trauma. We would need to be able to first understand the whole person in preparation, actually partner together in daily psychotherapeutic engagement to set a personal psychedelic agenda, then do the ibogaine with safety. We'd have to redefine what safety meant, meaning, of course, medical, but also psychological. Do you understand my mind? Emotional. Do you understand how I'm feeling so that I can relax and be curious and feel safe? And third is, fourth is spiritual. Are you going to impose some view on me, or can I be even agnostic, or can I be spiritual in the way that I am most safe? And the answer is absolutely yes. So we designed a care continuum that would satisfy understanding the whole person, setting a personal written agenda with a therapist after day of therapy in preparation for a safe ibogaine experience. And then, most importantly, I believe, acute aftercare. So could you really keep me in a place where I could use it, where I could draw connections between my intention, the ibogaine experience, and insights, and actually go home with a care plan that I could put to work? And that's really what we did. The best of addiction medicine combined, which means psychotherapy and behavioral science, and addiction medicine from a medical perspective combined with psychedelic assisted therapy. Of course, we have nutrition, adjunct therapies that are more ceremonial, sound therapy, yoga, qigong, etc. But really, the fundamental is that delivery model. We call it insight-oriented ibogaine because it's about the insight.
Yeah. I love it. So I have 1,000 questions about how it works at Beond
Please.
and the procedures in this process. But before we go into that, let's let the listeners know because it's funny. I literally just interviewed someone else about iboga. What is the difference between iboga and ibogaine, and is there a benefit to ibogaine over iboga? And is it legal in Mexico, where this is where your retreat center is? Yes, and why choose one over the other? I'm curious.
It's a good question, and curiosity is the underlying premise of my answer, because we have scientific evidence of a difference, but what you're asking is one better? And so let's first talk about the similarities. They both come from the same plant. They're both naturally derived. They're both used in a healing practice, a ceremony. And then there's a bit of a divergence. Iboga is a it's not altered usually. It's actually a, a powder that comes directly from the plant, and that has certain effects that oftentimes in ceremony and spiritual practice are perceived to be beneficial. Um, ibogaine is a purified version. It's a medical grade version of that, and one of the reasons we think it's better from a addiction medicine perspective is we can test it. We can test it for purity. And if you can test, remember, medicine, and not just plant medicine, but medicine is the way we practice it in this hybrid model, um, really relies on science and precision, in addition to the creative aspects, the care, provision, and so on, but precision. And so we really want to know exactly the dosage that is exactly appropriate for a specific set of physiological attributes. And what that means is we need to know exactly what's in that capsule and how much to give or to offer someone who's experiencing a particular set of symptoms of chemical dependency, depression, anxiety, trauma. And so we don't want variability. Whereas in another context, that might actually be perceived as a good thing. For us, it doesn't give, we use the most advanced electrocardiograms, the most advanced sonograms, sometimes the most advanced tools we can to measure liver enzymes, blood work, urinalysis, etc. We do that because we want to know exactly what your current state is from a medical perspective. Now, we don't stop there. That doesn't tell us everything we need to know. We also need to know how you feel, what your goals are, where you want to go, what happened, what is that story, um, you know, all your challenge areas: family, money, problem, career, self-esteem, emotion, trauma, etc. So we want to know that too. Ibogaine to us feels like a very precise way of administering the benefits of the iboga plant. Iboga is a more ceremonial, oftentimes used in a more ceremonial
Mm,
method. So
mm.
that's a bit of the differences and similarities, and I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, no, that really helps. Because I've known people who've worked with both, and of course, I've heard some pretty intense stories. I'm curious, if someone like me versus a heroin addict went to do ibogaine, is that like meaning I'm not a heroin addict? I do have an addiction to maybe like maple syrup and cacao, that kind of thing. But I'm curious, like, are there smaller doses versus bigger doses? Is it still like one of these 2-day long? I mean, is it a 2-day long experience that I've heard about with iboga, or is it like 4 days? How does it work? Like, what is the setup?
Okay, it's a great question. And the answer to the question is, how bad do you want to be healed from your syrup and cacao addiction? Is 2 days too long for you? So what I'd say is, listen, let's be clear that if there's, say, I would, in big buckets, there's three types of client or patient populations that we serve, that we have the privilege of serving. Let's take the first one. People who have usually tried other techniques of, in a clinical setting, of treating their chemical dependency, their depression, severe anxiety, or PTSD. They didn't feel satisfied with the results, and they're venturing out of what probably was recommended from a well-intended, Western trained physician or therapist into a realm where they're seeking a new set of benefits that they haven't yet received. For them, oftentimes, this is very strong, very, very severe suffering. And so their question isn't, how long is it going to take? but how long do I have to live that way anymore? And I went to rehab. I got on some medication, maintenance medication, whatever it might be, and I don't want to live like that anymore. The other medication didn't work satisfactorily. I don't want to live like that anymore. Or I'm in a very high risk situation and I don't want to live that way anymore. And what I tried didn't work. Can you help me? So we take those people, we make sure they're medically qualified, psychologically qualified, and prepared. And then we walk them through this process of 5 phases of insight oriented ibogaine. So they get to the other side and they have not only a sense of purpose, but a roadmap for how to use it, how they can help heal themselves, because they're self-motivated. They did the work. The plant medicine helped heal them, and we just created the environment and the support, academically trained, medically qualified, experienced support to make it possible. So the answer to your question is it's usually about 12 hours. Yes, there of course is variability in dosing. Of course, body weight, the type of condition, your own chemical use, in your history of chemical use. So all of these things are taken into consideration. That's why we do labs, EKGs. That's why we look at your health history. We talk to your own doctor. We want to understand where are you, so we can get it right. So then another set of people, they have not self-selected as an addict. Maybe they just eat too much maple syrup, and maybe they just love cacao, like a lot of people, or sugar in general. Or maybe they've got a dependency to an experience in their reality, media, social media, a phone, a person, grieving and loss, a career. Someone loses their job. Now they're wondering, why should I become a trial lawyer again? What else is there? They want to reset their relationship to that which no longer serves them. We love those people because they're so motivated to figure out, where do I want to go? And the plant helps them do that. That's, of course, going to change dosing and going to, of course, change the protocol a little bit. There's no cookie cutter method. Then finally, there's the people who are seeking optimization. Everything's great, and they feel like there's something more. And it's a spiritual transformation that's aided through a plant medicine. It's a physiological problem for the other two folks, but this is a psychological challenge. So, of course, that affects dosing, but we actually love all 3 of those types of participants. We call them guests, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah. So does that make sense to you?
Yeah, definitely.
The experience itself is usually about 12 or so hours. And here's what's good about that. 2 things. One, you're in a psychedelic experience. You're not watching your watch. You're disconnected from a sense of time and space. And that's part of the point. So it seems like about 45 minutes, and you're safe, and you're with nurses that are trained to be in an ICU, psychotherapists that are trained in addiction medicine or whatever your condition is, and your doctor with all these gadgets going on. But you're wearing an eye mask, you're listening to beautiful custom-made playlists, beautiful sound. And about 45 minutes later in your mind, you're like, I wonder if it's over yet. And the answer is almost. And that's about 12 hours. So again, It doesn't feel like 12 hours. Here's the other thing. And I can credit CEO of Journey Collab, Jishan, who really helped me understand something I knew it intuitively because I've done ibogaine here at Beond over 15 years after I stopped taking any drugs or alcohol. But I needed to know what it was like. But what I talked about with Jishan is he said, sometimes you need more time in the psychedelic experience to see more and to do the work, to see what you need, the plant or you need to see, so you can heal and detach or understand or reconcile. It's not a race. The good news is it doesn't take 30, 60, 90 days in like it does oftentimes in conventional
Mhm.
rehabilitation. And it does, and it doesn't cost the hundreds of thousands
I
of
was gonna
dollars.
say, yeah, 6 figures. Everybody I know has done. I mean, it's everybody's heard these stories about
Yeah.
rehabs and people wiping out their entire bank accounts, and then, they
Yeah,
still
you're
aren't
a
healed.
runner. You're a runner. You're an experienced runner. This is it's not a 5K. If a 5-MeO DMT experience is like a 5K, I've never said this before, but you see if it works for you. And say a ketamine experience is like a 10K, and um, a solid medicinal therapeutic dose of psilocybin is a half marathon, then ibogaine is a marathon.
Oh,
You
that's
get
good.
through
That
it.
sounds good.
You get through it. You run ultras. We don't
Yeah.
do ultras here.
I don't know. For me, 5-MeO was like ultra marathon, and let's say ayahuasca is maybe more like the marathon. But
Yeah,
I'm
I'm thinking
also.
about the timing, the
Oh no,
sense
I
of
hear. Yeah,
timing.
I totally get what you mean. I love it. I love it. Well, this actually brings me to my next question. I was going to ask you if you've worked with it before, and I'm glad to hear you have. I'm curious, because I'm probably like you at some level, right? Like I have typical human traumas. I have typical addictions to, the internet or my phone or sugar or whatever. But I'm generally functioning well, like life is generally pretty
Obviously.
good. There's always more.
Great.
There is always more.
Yeah.
There's always more optimization. There's always more healing. I'm curious, what did you notice in your life that changed from before you did it to after you did it? Like, did you experience some kind of significant shift or just an awareness or like any,
And,
yeah,
and I think you mean
and,
and. Um,
and,
so it's a beautiful question, and obviously your life seems to be going really well. And like many people, I would hypothesize you're extremely stressed out sometimes. You have untreated trauma, that you have patterns in your life where you're sort of thinking like, why do I do that? Like, okay, so for you, maybe it's not going to kill you, or maybe you're not going to destroy your beautiful, your work, your podcast, your businesses, and so on. But you're just like, why does that happen? This
mhm.
happens, and then that happens. What's going on with that? So you go to a therapist. You talk to that therapist, and you talk and you talk and you talk and you talk, and maybe you try some medication. Maybe it feels a little better. Maybe you don't even notice. Maybe you have a bad reaction, gain weight, sexual dysfunction, etc. So you're like, there's got to be something better. Really? So you end up with psychedelics. And then you try some psychedelics and you're like, I feel better, but it went away. I felt relief, but why do I have to keep doing that psychedelic for relief? I didn't change. I didn't change. I just see the potential to change, but I didn't really operationalize, activate. That would be a clue for me that somebody is like ready for ibogaine safely, ethically, psychotherapeutically administered in an environment where you'll feel loved and you'll be like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. Not gratuitously luxurious, but really beautiful. Okay, so if that place exists and it's called Beyond, then I would say you talk to the therapist. We start remotely. So you start in a podcast with a therapeutic coach. We ask you a lot of questions about what are you seeking? Where are you hoping to end up? What's your agenda? What are your goals? What's your whole life like? Okay. Then um, this you're not your life isn't going to crater if you don't stop eating Ben and Jerry's, or you don't put your phone down or pick it up first thing in the morning, or you can't break up with that person, or you are desperate because they broke up with you, or whatever. You tried all those things, or you lost someone. COVID just happened. So many people lost so many people, and you're grieving and you're doing grief and loss therapy, but it's not changing. So you want to break through to a transformation. So what we would say is, bring us that. Let us work with you and ibogaine in the context of 10 days in a beautiful environment with great nutrition, great therapists. You don't have to do it, massage every day, etc. And we would hope to experience this transformation. For me, I'm over a decade and a half, never touched any drugs and alcohol. And I also still know I have deep childhood trauma, unresolved, even after years of therapy, EMDR, somatic, intensive, vipassana, meditation, breath work, etc. I still am using a maladaptive coping mechanism to treat my trauma. Could be food, could be exercise. I'll go run 20 miles. What that's like.
Yeah.
So what I would say is there a way for me to turn that around and see that trauma as a way of learning to feel, learning to integrate, learning to be more heart-centered, being letting my spiritual self lead my life, less my intellect or my body, more emotional, more spiritual. And ibogaine shows us that, but it takes a while because it could be multiple traumas. And for me, what I saw was, number one, incredible empathy, incredible sense of purpose, of a desire to grow, a sense that I wanted to change, even though I didn't feel like I was going to wreck my life. I wanted to learn Spanish. I'm working in Mexico. I wanted to learn how to be a better parent. I am a good parent, but could I be a more patient parent, more empathetic brother, sister, husband? Of course. Could I really listen better? And that empathetic experience comes from GDNF. GDNF increase comes from a lot of psychedelics. Ibogaine creates noribogaine. Noribogaine stays in the liver for over 90 days. So you have this feeling, purpose, a sense of passion to improve and change your life. And that's why we start aftercare right after the ibogaine, because we got to help you get busy in recovery, in trauma, in healing, in reconciliation. Or in your case, it might be, let's be more intentional. Let's build new practices around, do I need my phone or am I distracting myself from something? Can I relate better to that person, or can I let them go and thank them? They were perfect before I met them. They're perfect now, and so am I. Can I move on successfully?
Amazing. Amazing. I'm getting sold on this more and more. But I have a question. Especially with, like, let's say addicts or people who have had trauma patterns repeating for 40 years and they can't seem to get out of this pattern. Even with the integration, which that's the word I use a lot, is the integration, after the experience, and maybe they work with one of your specialists for a few months. What are the chances that they then have to come back in 6 months or in 12 months? Like, is ibogaine does it have this kind of like permanent or almost semi-permanent lasting effect? And how is that just like, I've heard this before, like it resets the brain. I mean, I don't know if that's really true, but how does that work? And like, because we've all been told, psychedelics will heal this and heal that. And the reality is they don't, because we have to get to the root of the problem. We have to do the integration. We have to do the life changes, the daily practices. But is there a difference with ibogaine versus psilocybin?
Yeah, well, there's obviously
Yeah.
differences. But in the
Chemical.
context that you're asking, first of all, thank you for that question. You ask really good questions, and I'm so excited to meet you and be here.
Devil's advocate questions. No.
Huh?
Devil's advocate.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
So first of all, long-term habitual behaviors, we know take time to heal, to change. And so again, ibogaine has a really special effect of interrupting a chemical dependency, which is a physiological craving in the body for a chemical or a physiological reaction to an experience that may have happened in the past. So we're feeling it, and then there's something that happens in the mind related to that. And then we're thinking about that feeling, and it's this cycle. I'm anxious. I feel depressed, right? Or I can't interrupt this pattern, this response to stimulant in my environment that triggers a symptom of PTSD, right? So that's been going on for a long time. So of course it's going to take time, but the ibogaine has a very special effect of interrupting that in a really profound way. Now, so do some other chemicals, but they don't last as long. And so we have to go back sooner. And so a lot of people have tried that: ketamine, psilocybin, cannabis, etc. All beautiful experiences, and they weren't satisfied. Then you ask another really important question. Part of your question is, do they have to come back? Well, let's look at that. So the the question is, well, did they get the work done in the psychedelic experience? Now we wouldn't invite you back within probably over 45 to 90 days anyway. We'd love to have you back. You can come visit, no worries. Get a massage, enjoy the great food, hang out by the pool. But we're not going to give you what we would say is that there's two pieces to this journey, at least. One is self-motivated healing, and that means, are you doing the work? Did you like interrupt your addiction to maple syrup and that was your example, remember? Um, or phone or heroin or fentanyl with the ibogaine, and then go right back into an environment and not use the tools that we developed together to say, that's a feeling. That's a thought. In the past, you reacted by picking up your phone, by calling your ex, by going into a deep, dark hole of depression. Now we've got a different set of practices. We've got a support system. We've got a coach that you can call from Beyond. We'll take your call 24 hours a day. You can talk to our therapists who love you and know you about, like, I'm having that feeling, and I feel like I'm going to do it. The noribogaine still in your liver, you're still practicing. So I'd say you're not coming back in 6 months. However, I have started to have this thought that maybe the journey doesn't just end. That maybe what happens is we interrupt the behavior, the addiction, the trauma, the depression. We reset our relationship with grief or a big life transition. We go out, we do the new practice. Guess what happens? We get more life. So we might want to come back and say, there's something new. Not that I'm suffering in the way I was, but there's some deeper I want to go. I've started to think, because we know, just in the case of addiction, we know it's a family disease. We know trauma affects everyone. So the maladaptive response to untreated trauma, depression, anxiety, chemical dependency, it affects everyone. We've seen some people come here because they are the problem in their family, experience what we do, insight-oriented ibogaine, leave here truly with a powerful sense of purpose, ready to go home and continue the recovery, the healing in their new practice. Guess who calls? Their family. And at first I was like, oh no, something's gone wrong. It's actually something went right. Now their sister, their brother, their parents want to come because they're like, I was living with that. And now I see so and so is different. What was that like? And they come down. Multiple families. Now you start to think about, you've helped one person in the family not be the problem. They were never really the problem. They just had a problem. And then you see everyone else say, you're actually a great example. That's recovery. That's real recovery. So the answer is, do you have to come back? The answer is not for the reason you came.
Mhm.
Might you want to come back
Yeah.
because there's something more you want to learn? We'll talk about it. Medically qualified, psychologically qualified. If it's legitimate, we'd love to have you back.
Mm. I love
Or,
it.
one
Yeah.
last point,
Yeah.
we might say there's somewhere else you should go.
Mm.
Maybe there is an ayahuasca experience, a psilocybin experience, a 5-MeO-DMT experience that would complement what you got from the ibogaine. We don't do it here because we specialize, but of course we have associated highly qualified practitioners that we love and we trust and
Mm.
respect, that we would say, talk to them, we'll help you, we'll share with you them what you went through. Maybe that's better than coming back.
Mm. Thank you so much for sharing this. No, this is
You're so
amazing. And yeah,
welcome.
this is what I've experienced with friends, with iboga, with DMT, with, ibogaine. Ibogaine, one of my good friends many years ago had OCD, like pretty debilitating, and went to do ibogaine. And not only does she not really have OCD, or, maybe a little bit is still lingering, but it's very functional, but she quit drinking and quit this and quit that, and just life is different. And it was
Right.
amazing.
Sometimes
What
we
I'm,
call that sometimes we call that addition by subtraction.
yeah, yeah.
You take
It's like,
ibogaine helps you take a bunch of things away, and
yeah,
actually then your other type of therapy really works better. So
yeah.
I'm
It's
happy
like
to hear about
what's
your
not
friends.
serving you, right? Well, this actually brings me to my next question is, even let's say even people who are going there for addiction or for, major PTSD, major trauma. I'm curious if this medicine also wakes people up to finding, let's say, a purpose. To me, in one of my opinion, is one of the biggest depression, causes of depression, anxiety, and trauma in, at least here in America where I live, is people just trying to survive by paying the bills, being in these misaligned careers that they really hate, that make them miserable, which makes them depressed, which makes them go home and drink, which, that was the path I was on. Me and pretty much everybody I knew, we were, young, living in New York City, just trying to make money and survive. And then the only way to survive was have jobs that we hated. And the only way to get by the jobs we hated was numbing ourselves with drugs and alcohol. And it wasn't until I spun myself out of that loop that everything started to change. But it was not an easy process. Um, but I'm wondering, do you experience people going there for, let's say, yeah, alcoholism or depression, and then they find out that they actually want to, change their career or their purpose, or, everything is
Mm.
in the way. What have you seen, or have you noticed these patterns, or?
Another beautiful question, because for me, to my mind, what you're asking isn't about treatment, right? It's about healing.
Mhm.
Okay, so, and there is no healing without growth. And so there oftentimes isn't growth, really satisfactory growth in the type of self development, spiritual development, transformation that doesn't come with a sense of purpose, right? I mean, so yes, we welcome the privilege of serving someone who feels not only do they not have a purpose, their purpose is so misaligned that they're just sort of getting by. And the beautiful thing is they still have a sense that that's not true, that that's not who they really are, but they can't get out of that. And so, and again, you mentioned drugs and alcohol. That maladaptive coping isn't just drugs and alcohol. It could be working more. It could be working, buying, shopping, gambling, pornography. It could be relationships, right? We know this. And so none of those maladaptive coping mechanisms, they might make someone feel better temporarily, but they're not allowing them to grow. So they have stress, they treat it this maladaptive way, and they don't go forward. They come back. Why am I doing that? Why? And nothing works. So the answer to your question is healing is what we do. We treat people who want to heal, and we help them heal. So, of course, they grow. And of course, when they start to see, they say, I did that. My purpose was to come here. Of course, we cultivate that. There's a reason you're here, we believe. The reason you're here at Beond, there's a reason you're here now, and there's a reason that you're here on this planet, and it's not to take ibogaine. Let's help you figure that out. Now, we just ask good questions, and you just work through a process. But 100% of the time, in my experience, people leave here and they say, of course they say, thank you. You helped me so much overcome this thing, addiction, trauma, depression, etc. And we say, go to the mirror, look in the mirror, and say that again. Thank you very much. You helped me so much. These people helped me do it, but it's self-motivated. No one comes here against their will, ever. It's a rule. We won't take you. You can't be sentenced to Beond. You must apply and come. And therefore, we know through remote preparation, psychotherapy, a lot of good questions, a lot of writing, a lot of art, a lot of expression, creativity, movement, body work, breath work. We know that something's coming up. And of course, it's healing. And our job, our passion is to go, okay, look, you're on that path. Now what? So if you're not doing that, what do we replace it with? That's why you don't come back in 6 months, because you have something better or higher. You have support that's stronger than just your mind. But now who are you going to help?
Mm.
Is it your kids? Is it your family? Is it yourself? Okay, so great. You don't want to be a trial lawyer anymore. You don't want to be a banker anymore. We get them all the time. You don't want to be a healthcare executive anymore. This is the best one. You want to become a body worker so you can give deep, integrative healing work yourself. Great. So we say, bring us the broken, the people that are suffering. And of course they leave here. 100% of the time they have a strong sense of purpose.
Mm.
Oftentimes they say, I'm going back to talk to my family, to heal. Then I'm going to get my degree so I can become a therapist. And then I want to come work at Beond.
Yeah.
And we say, of course, come on back. We're overbooked. I wish that we could grow as fast as we could to get to our sort of mission goal. 273 people will die of a fatal overdose in the United States today.
Mm.
Today.
No.
Just like yesterday, just like tomorrow, unless something changes. Well, apparently we can't keep the fentanyl out. Apparently we can't create a conventional rehabilitation center that works effectively. Mm-hmm. Low single-digit percentage of success versus a high double-digit percentage of success for us. So something has to change. On top of that, another 25-ish, U.S. military veterans will commit suicide today as a result of untreated PTSD. Like, we're talking about serious epidemic with fatal consequences. So that we're not talking about all the collateral damage yet. So, of course, we want to grow. We want to be able to do at least that many treatments per day so that we can say we did everything we could for people who want help and can't get it, can't make it. It doesn't work. Nothing else worked for them.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think these are such important points. And yeah, I'm glad you mentioned people coming out with the purpose. I actually get a lot of healthcare workers as clients, and it seems to be an industry where so many people are burnt out. That's not working, it's not serving, and then they wake up and realize, it's not even part of my own path anymore.
Right.
I have a couple more questions before we go.
Please.
Two things I've
So fun.
wondered. One is you have this retreat center in Mexico. I'm assuming, if you have this amazing staff, it is not cheap. Most of, I'm going to Peru literally next week, and that's not cheap. And that's not even a fancy retreat center. That's like the middle of nowhere in Peru. And I just hope they have maybe a little hot water.
Yeah.
How do we ensure that, ibogaine is getting to the people who need it and accessible? And then also, we all know it's not legal here in the US, right? But is it legal in Mexico? And supposedly it's legal in Canada too. And what is wrong? Like, does big pharma want us to actually keep taking fentanyl and die? Because there's days where I think that, you know. Yeah, what is it? So these are two separate questions. One is
Sure.
about the accessibility and the pricing, and the other is about like the accessibility when it comes to legalization.
Right. Another great one. Thank you. So first of all, I listened to your excellent show with Char, Boogie,
Yeah,
and
Joel.
reciprocity and the depth of that spiritual reverence. So I think there's a third component, and I respect him tremendously and Elizabeth for the work that they do. They're spectacular people,
Mhm.
and uh, deeply, deeply, deeply honor their practice. However, so what that means is there's a third element, which is reciprocity. So we don't want to use plant medicine to heal somebody that harms a community that cultivates it. So first, we do whatever we can to make donations to nonprofit organizations like Blessings of the Forest, who do the work to develop the infrastructure, the community, education, agriculture, fair pricing, the Nagoya Protocol certification of ibogaine, so that we're not exploiting the land or a community for a medicine and then passing it on, hoping that it can do everything. We truly believe that you can't harm one part of the equation and heal most effectively the other side. There's another, which is accessibility. So we struggled with this so much because we're a venture backed startup. We have investors. We love our investors so much. But there are investors, particularly some in wellness, some of them in psychedelics, who are like, you know what? Yes, we want to have a return on investment, but we also see the purpose. And we never had this debate with them because we've had great revenue, we have great margins, but still, how do we meet the need without overemphasizing on the profit? You put people before profit, and the rest will take care of itself. So, what we say is we have a limited capacity, right? Every month. Let's say hypothetically it's 30 treatments a month, right? Which is plenty. It's a lot. It's more than anybody else can do. We say the first 10 that are reserved in that month are the lowest price, which is over 40% lower than anyone we can find in the sector. So we say it's like $6,500. People are charging 10, 12, 15, 40. Like, we're like, okay, we think that's misaligned. So we say the first 10 people that reserve in any given month get a very accessible low price. And then we say we only need a deposit. And then you can get a guarantor, you can pay by credit card. We will work through this with you. We can tell whether you're motivated. And no one has ever taken ibogaine here and not finished paying, not once. So we need you to secure your spot. First 10, the lowest price. The next 10 are a medium price, slightly higher, so about $8,000. And then that last 10 are normally the people who like have to come right now. And they're like, oh, I know that this is a last minute thing. I'm medically qualified, psychologically qualified, but I got to come next week. So they pay a slightly higher price, which is then for us is at the about par with other facilities.
Mm-hmm.
The reason we do that is because we want the people who think they can't afford it to be motivated to reserve their spot early. Finally, what we do is we offer scholarships, and we have something. If you go to beyond.us, so beyond us, beyond your story, beyond your trauma, beyond your addiction, beyond us is the healing. That name just came to us one day. It was amazing. If you go there and you read about priority access for LGBTQIA plus veterans, BIPOC communities, people with disabilities, we not only give you a scholarship, we move you to the front of the line because you're more likely to have been disproportionately impacted and unable to get access to treatment that's effective. So, of course, we want to do our part there too. That's an application process. People tell us the most beautiful stories, and we welcome them. And then there's the other, what we call fair pricing. And the reason we do that, Beth, and you're a strategist, you're an innovator, we thought about this long and hard. It was, how can you be the best in your sector if you're not setting a new standard in every dimension, including pricing?
I love that.
We know we could be the most expensive
Yeah,
and the best, but that feels to us like sort of a um, duplication of what big pharma seems to have done, where you have medications that people desperately need, and they have to go somewhere else in the world to get them. Whatever, they have to choose between food and medicine. That makes no sense in a world where healing is important. And the investors and the boards of those companies, we believe, should be ashamed of themselves. We believe that.
yeah.
So a commitment to fair pricing, beyond priority access and scholarships, and of course reciprocity is how we address that.
Beautiful. I'm so glad you named this and led with reciprocity, and then also I love this pricing model because this does make it more accessible, and there are certain populations that definitely, to me, like need this medicine more than us optimizer types. Although it is for everybody, right? To each their own.
Can I
But
tell you
before
one more
we,
thing about that?
yeah,
One more small
yeah,
thing. So here's the thing. I'm a curious entrepreneur. I look for business innovation. I partner with people that are scientists, therapists, chefs, massage therapists, sound therapists, Watsu providers, whatever, right? They all work here. And it's a beautiful place, as I told you, right? And so I looked around at the whole sector, and they all have this strange model where they were saying, oh, it's X $1,000 and it's Y number of days. And you know what happens when you do that? We wrote about this on our website, the pricing. Immediately someone goes, well, how short can I be there? How fast can you deliver it? And they've got it upside down. And so we said, it's 65, it's 8,000, 6,500 booked first in the month, 8,000 if you're right behind. We're honest, we'll tell you the truth. How many spots? Take your time. Or if you're that last group and you got to come right now and we're running out of space, you pay 10,000. We'll give you fair payment schedule, etc. And we don't even say when you have to leave. You know what's amazing? Not one person. So they're like, well, I got to get back to work. How long is it going to take? We're like, okay, here's your protocol. Here's your treatment plan. It's in writing. It's co-signed by the therapist and a licensed credentialed MD. So we think it's going to take 10 days. If you need 2 extra days, 3 extra days, because you're still in integration, you're still developing that protocol. That treatment sort of roadmap for recovery. Stay. If we have the space, stay. And not one time has someone taken advantage of it because they're like, I've had such a beautiful experience. I feel so empowered. I want to go.
Wow.
I want to go get to work. It's incredible. They don't just come and live here.
Hmm.
We've never had someone try to exploit that.
I love these new ways, well, new yet ancient ways of doing business.
Yeah,
Right up my alley.
fair, community oriented,
Yeah.
nurturing,
Trust,
honest, transparency.
oriented. Yeah. I mean, this is the way of the future, anyways. So we better get used to it.
It
Um,
should be the only way in psychedelics, though.
yeah.
And there's a real risk of incorporating too many sort of, I think, obsolete, counterproductive, conventional
Yeah.
methods of operating.
Yep.
Watch out for that.
Yes. We will
You
we
don't have
will
to be
see how
that
it all
way.
rolls out. Trust me. I
You don't
know.
have to be that way.
Well, just, some parting words. Where can people find out about your upcoming retreats and where to, follow Beyond or you or both? What's in the plan for the next 6 to 12 months for for Beyond?
Well, first of all, we take people when they're ready. So we don't book in advance. Like you can come all as a cohort. People come and go on the same day some days. And we thought that would be a problem. It's not a problem because they talk. Someone's coming, they're feeling scared. Someone's leaving, they're going, this is amazing. Um, and there's a connection, there's a bond. So we don't do retreats. You can come any day you want.
Mm.
You can come at 1 in the morning. You can come 1 in the afternoon. We pick you up at the airport. We bring you here, and it's on for about 10 days or 2 weeks, not longer than that, usually. You can find out more, of course, by going to beyond.us or US. You can look on YouTube, Beyond Addiction. We have a bunch of videos. We've done interviews with therapists, scientists, doctors, coaches, Gabor Mate, people that really understand. You have to look at this differently. You can't blame someone and say you're bad, you're doing bad things. You know, we should just stop. Why don't you just stop, Beth? Because you can't. So you need to love and you need to heal and you need to grow and you will pay that back. So watch it on YouTube, Beond addiction. Um, of course, Instagram, Beyond, Beond, um, addiction or treatment. I obviously don't do our social media. Um, but
We'll put the
Beond,
links in the show notes for
yeah,
everybody.
please, beond.us
Hmm.
is the best place. And
Perfect.
and what's coming up for us is, we continue to welcome people. We continue to witness the incredible, miraculous transformation that our doctors and therapists and the plant medicine ibogaine helps them achieve because they want it, because they do it themselves. And we're growing. We're opening more. As you look on our website, we'll open um, uh, 5 new facilities by the end of 2023.
All where? I was
In
actually going to ask you
Mexico.
that.
Yeah,
Mexico
in
or
Mexico. Now, this is one last question you asked I didn't answer. So, unfortunately, ibogaine, like cannabis, is a Schedule 1 substance in the United States. I don't know why. Cannabis is legal in more than 30 states for recreational use, and it's illegal at a federal level. Ibogaine is decriminalized in certain jurisdictions like other plant medicines. We think that's wonderful. But you cannot really provide medical grade, ethical, commercial um, ibogaine-assisted treatment in the United States. We would love to eliminate the airplane in our model. We hope to be right on the border of Texas. We hope to be right on the border of California. So we will open in Mexico until we believe we'll be invited by state legislators to come help them with the problem of untreated trauma and the epidemic of addiction in their state first. Surprisingly, we think it's going to be Texas. We're having those conversations, unofficial, but they're interested. People want to see change. The same story of people using, people being incarcerated, people overdosing, causing great cost, trauma to their communities.
Mhm.
It's we don't hear it anymore.
Yeah.
We need to hear that there's a solution.
I'm so glad you're in conversations with this. And Tom, I am so glad you came on and explained to everybody a lot about Beond and the ibogaine experience. And I really have a lot of hope for the future of where your company is going and where the opioid epidemic and other addiction and PTSD epidemics are going here in the US and actually, around the world. Thank you so much for this work you're doing. It's really beautiful and important. So glad to finally meet you and have you on here.
It's really an honor and a privilege. We're so grateful. I represent a bunch of beautiful, incredible, talented people that are part of Beond here. And then I represent the people that came and did their work. So it's a privilege. It's an honor to be invited. We're so grateful to be with you. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you. We'll just have all the links right here in the show notes. Reach out to Tom or me if you have any questions. And we'll see you next week on another episode. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you're feeling inspired, I'd appreciate it if you showed your love with a review. And check out my YouTube channel where you can find the video version of this podcast. You can also head to bethaweinstein.com to learn more about me and grab my free business growth trainings. Remember, you carry your own unique medicine, and your medicine is what we need for these times.